Welcome back to Competition Everything, Reading Analysis Part 2 of Lord of the Flies. As always, like, subscribe, and ask us any questions you have in the comments below. Jumping in here with the first part of the plot, the novel begins with a plane crash on a remote island as described in the Pacific, and it becomes clear after Piggy and Ralph, the first boys to be introduced, that there are no adults around after they celebrate and do handstands and jump in the water in thrill of being alone on the island. Piggy spots a shell and says to Ralph, who's already kind of established his authority over Piggy, hey, that makes a loud sound and they're really expensive. And Ralph is like, whoa, and he goes over and he takes the shell, he blows in it, and it makes a loud sound as Piggy promised, and a bunch of boys come over from all around the island from hearing the shell. And they all gather around Ralph. They're like, oh my gosh, he has this shell, he can make this loud sound, oh my gosh, he's powerful. And a group of the boys that approach them is a choir. They're in matching black robes, and their leader seems to be Jack, who's ordering them to walk orderly in a line and halt when he says so. And so after they all kind of conjourn, they have agreed that it's best for them to stick together for the good of the group, and they elect Ralph as their leader, kind of to the disappointment of Jack, but Ralph says, Jack, you and your men can be hunters, and you can be the lead of the hunters, so Jack is satisfied. He's like, okay, that works fine. And so then Ralph, Jack, and one of his choir boys, Simon, set off to explore the island. When they get back, Ralph proposes to the boys that they should set a signal fire to attract the attention of ships so that they can get rescued, and the boys are excited at this idea because many of the little boys do want to go home. And so they get a pile of dead wood from the forest, and they put it on the top of a mountain, and they set it on fire using Piggy's eyeglasses as kind of a fire glass. And after they set the fire, they're so busy celebrating and being happy that they got the fire to light that they're not paying attention. And a fire sweeps through the entire forest and burns a good portion of the forest. However, after the fire, they discover that the little boy is missing. He was only ever described as a boy with a mulberry birthmark on his face, but he is missing. And it's odd because right before they did go to set the fire, he asked about a beastie. Was there a monster? And all the boys were like, nah, no, what are you talking about? No, it's fine. And Jack jumps up and he goes, if there is, we'll kill it. And Ralph goes, there's not, don't worry. And they're like, okay then. And they go to set the fire and he disappears. However, all the boys are like, okay, that was weird, but, we're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. And so they start to really enjoy their life without grown-ups. They're really happy and they're ecstatic. We get freedom. We can play whenever we want. We can swim in the ocean. And Ralph always seems to think ahead, and he's trying to build shelters and hunting huts so that they can keep things dry and keep themselves dry when it does rain. So they're building hunters and stuff. And the hunters come back one day without a pig after multiple promises to catch a pig. And Jack, who's the leader of the hunters, as I said before, becomes very paranoid with the idea of killing and getting meat. And when a ship passes on the horizon of the sea one day, Ralph and Piggy are the first to see it while the hunters are out on another expedition. And they're like, oh my god, there's a ship, guys, where's the fire, we can throw more green leaves and make more smoke. And they turn around, and then Piggy's like, Ralph, the fire's gone. And then Ralph's like, what do you mean? And they turn around and they're like, oh my god, the fire's out. So they go up to the fire and they're trying to light it, but it's too late, the ship leaves. And Jack comes in with all his hunters, and they're in a frenzy. They're dancing and they're shouting and they're saying, spill its blood, slit its throat, kill it, because they've caught a pig, and they're throwing it over their heads, and they're so excited, and they've gone into a savage kind of dance. And Ralph is like, Jack, it was your job to keep after the fire with your hunters. What's happening? And he's like, hey, dude, it's not my problem, but look at this pig I got you. Look at this great pig. Aren't I the savior? And then he's like, no, you're not. And then Piggy's like, yeah, Jack. And then Jack knows he can't hit Ralph, so he hits Piggy. And Ralph blows the conch shell and scolds the boys, and he tries to restore order to the chaotic night. So as they're having this meeting, it quickly becomes clear that a lot of the little boys have become afraid of nightmares and the beast that they think is haunting the island or even the sea. And so they start coming up with all these theories. There's a beast in the mountain. There's something in the water. It's going to come out from the sky. It's coming out at night. Is there a beast? And again, Ralph and Jack are like, hey, calm down. It's not a beast. It's just your overactive imaginations. And they're all like, no, but okay. And so not long after that meeting ends, it's obvious to the reader that two military planes are engaging in a battle above the island. However, the boys asleep don't notice, and after flashing lights and explosions, a pilot falls down in a parachute, dead, through the forest and crumples in near their signifier mountain. And Sam and Eric are two of the twins that supported Ralph from the beginning and do stick with him till the end. But that's not really important to this part of the story because they're asleep and they're trying to keep the fire going. And they don't see the parachutist land, so when they wake up, they just see the silhouette of it, and they see the parachute flapping in the wind, and they think it has wings, it's like roaring, and they think it's the beast, and they sprint back to the camp to tell everyone that they've seen the horrible monster, and that it is real, and it's making weird sounds, and it's big, and it's going to attack them based on what they've seen. So after that one meeting, things start to escalate, and the boys become more and more scared of the monster to the point where Jack, Ralph, and Roger begin to travel up a mountain in order to find the beast or see where it hides, quote unquote. And they travel up the monster and they see the silhouette of the parachuter that Sam and Eric did see. And from the distance, they think it's a huge ape. And Jack and Ralph and Roger run down the mountain. They're like screaming. They're like, oh my gosh. They're like, it's a monster. And they tell the whole band of boys, they're like, there's a monster. We saw it with our own eyes. And then Jack points at Ralph. He goes, he's a coward. He ran. We went up the mountain. He should be removed from the position. And he does not deserve to be chief. He's a coward. And all the other boys are like, but we kind of like Ralph, like we like him as chief. He's pretty cool. And then Jack's like, no. And he gets really pouty and he gets kind of petty. And he runs away from the beach and he's like, if anyone wants to join me for meat and better life, you can come with me. I'll be at Castle Rock. And then Ralph is like, pshaw, let's go build a fire on the beach rather than the mountain so that we don't set any trees on fire. And all the boys are like, okay. But then a lot of them secretly join Jack as night begins to heighten and they're scared and they want meat. And Jack, the author switches perspectives and now they're focused on Castle Rock with Jack and all his now followers. And he declares himself leader and all the boys address him as chief. And the new tribe of hunters organizes a hunt and they slaughter a sow for the occasion and they decapitate the sow and they put its head on a stake at the head of the jungle as kind of an offering to the beast because Jack convinces the boys that it's something to be feared. And then Simon is walking through the forest, and Simon did still stay with Ralph, so he sees the pig head for the first time. And he kind of freaks out and he passes out. And in his head, he hears a voice claiming to be the Lord of the Flies. And it tells him that he will never escape, and he exists within all men, and that he is there, and that he will take over, and that Simon cannot do anything to hide from him. And when Simon wakes up from this weird vision, he sees the dead parachutist, except he's the only one that's been able to realize that it's a person, not a beast. And Simon goes to the beach to figure out how to tell everyone that there is no beast, and he gets more and more excited. He's like, oh my god, there's no beast, I'm the one that figured it out, dude, I'm gonna be the coolest person ever. And then he realizes they're not at the beach, and he goes to Castle Rock. He's like, maybe they're all at Castle Rock, and he sees that everyone's enjoying a feast, even Ralph and Piggy, who were determined not to join Jack. They did go join him to eat meat, and when they see Simon's clouded and kind of bruised up figure from fainting, Jack's like, oh my god, it's the beast, kill it, kill it, kill it. And then they're all like, oh my god. And so they start running at him and screaming at him with their bare hands. And they kill him, and they eventually kill him and throw his body off a cliff. All because they believed he was the beast that Simon was coming to warn them about. And following the morning after Simon's slaughter, Ralph and Piggy kind of wake up and they talk about what happened. And Ralph is like, hey, we murdered someone. And then Piggy's like, nah. He was like, what are you saying? No, we didn't murder someone. It was an accident. It was a mistake. We didn't know. And then Ralph's like, hey, that was murder. And then Piggy's like, no, it wasn't. And he's in very strong denial. And they make their way back to the beach, and then they're still accompanied by Sam and Eric. And at this point, it's only Sam, Eric, Ralph, and Piggy. And Jack's hunters basically raid them and steal Piggy's glasses in order to be able to make fire. And Ralph's group travels to see Jack's followers in order to convince him to give the glasses back, make him kind of see reason. And then Jack's like, Sam and Eric. And then he's like, get them. Get Sam and Eric. And then they're tied up. And he fights with Ralph. And Roger, one of the boys that went exploring with Ralph and Jack originally, is ordered by Jack, although not directly, indirectly. He does push a boulder off a mountain and killing Piggy and shattering the conch shell at the same time, which is significant in that the last symbol of unity and the last sign of intelligence die at the same time. And Ralph barely escapes with his life as people are throwing spears at him, and he's slashed in his side. And Ralph hides for the rest of the day and night in a shrub while the other boys hunt for him. And Jack is like, hey, he's not coming out, we'll smoke him out. They set the forest on fire. And Ralph runs, and he collapses on the beach, and he prepares to be killed. And when he looks up, he sees a naval officer standing above him, and the British officer noticed the fire raging in the jungle, and he came over, and the other boys, Jack's hunters that were following him, burst out onto the beach, and they stop right at the side of the officer, and the officer's like, Ralph. He looks at Ralph, and he says, explain. And Ralph is like, we are stuck here. And then he's like, fun and games, isn't it? When he looks at all the savage boys with sticks and stuff. And then Ralph is just silent. He said, who's the leader here? And Ralph goes, me, immediately. And Jack's just kind of like, he is about to say something, he takes a deep breath, and then he just steps back, knowing that there's greater authority at the island now. And as soon as the man pauses, Ralph starts to cry, and all the other boys start to sob. And as they sob, the military officer turns around to give them a moment out of embarrassment, as he prepares to go fight a war in the same naive and almost immature way that the boys did on the island in real life. And because Golding did write this novel not only as a good story, but as a representation of what he thinks the corrupt human center is, I'm going to go a little bit into the philosophy behind it. This novel is heavily influenced by Sigmund Freud's idea of the id, ego, and superego parts of our brain. The id part of the brain, represented by Jack in Lord of the Flies, is its survival instincts. They are most buried by the ego and the superego. However, in dire situations, it will come out and find the need to hunt, kill, eat, survive, and find pleasure. And the ego is kind of the balance between the superego and the id. And it says, hey, we need to survive, but we need to do it rationally. We need to do it the right way, we need to be kind, but we need to survive. And the ego in the story represents Ralph, who's kind of the bridge between extreme righteousness and pure brute, which takes in the form of Jack. And the superego can debatably be Piggy or Simon, though most people will say it's Piggy. The superego represents morality, rights and wrongs. Who's the most intelligent in this situation? When you have a choice, your brain thinks with this part of your brain. What would benefit me most in the long run? What would benefit the people around me? What's the right thing to do? And that is most of the philosophy behind the main characters in Lord of the Flies. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching as always, and we hope that this helped you further understand or pass your test on Lord of the Flies.